The iMore Show is brought to you today by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website, portfolio, and online store. For a free trial and 10% off, visit squarespace.com and enter offer code iMore at checkout. A better web starts with your website. Your website. Hey everyone, it is October 30, 2014. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to talk all about the new iPads, all about the new Macs, about some App Store come-ins and go-ins, and everything else in the week that is Apple. This is the iMore Show. Joining me this week, we have Kaya, who I believe is a Shiba, and her personal ally. How's it going, Kaya?
You want to talk? She's very angry. She would like to be barking at squirrels, and this is the only way I know right now to contain her and not have her bark in the background throughout the whole podcast. So.
She is way smaller than she looks on your Instagram feed.
Everyone says that when they see her. People come over and they're like, is that the dog you post pictures of? Because that dog looks way smaller in person. She's only like 16 pounds. She's like a little lap dog.
Also joining us, although she is not holding a Shiba at present, Serenity Caldwell. How are you, Serenity?
I'm good. I've got some lunch. I've got good company, ready to talk some Apple stuff. There's a cat somewhere in this room who may or may not make an appearance.
You look like thumbs up for lunch.
I'll trade you a bagel for a Shiba.
Kaya is worth way more than I'm offended on her behalf.
Is it a Montreal bagel?
I don't know. I've never had one, so I don't know.
There are 6 dogs upstairs, so adding a 7th might be a bad idea.
We should just let the dogs podcast. I'm all for that. I think we need more diversity in species on these shows. All right, so it has been an interesting week. I think since last week we have all achieved our goal of getting an iPad Air 2. There wasn't a launch event, as there is some years. There wasn't just a day and a time where everyone could line up and the Apple employees would come out clapping, and then you could run in and hope to get the iPad of your choosing. They were supposed to be scheduled for delivery on Friday, but they sort of rolled into stores between Wednesday or Thursday. What was your iPad procurement process like, Serenity?
I pre-ordered mine, which in retrospect I guess was a mistake because I got mine on Friday. Yay! But that was 2 days after everyone else had gotten them, so.
But you never know.
Yeah, you don't. Sometimes the shipping comes early. It really depends.
And what about you, Allie?
Well, I was on vacation, as I seem to be throughout every Apple event lately. So Renee was nice enough to pre-order mine for me, and I got mine Friday as well. But I wasn't home until late Wednesday, almost Thursday, so.
So mine arrived on Thursday, early in the morning. The stores were supposed to get them Wednesday, but for some reason my store didn't. They did get the iPad Mini 3, though, so I picked one of those up. And then before I could cancel my order and go pick one up in the store, it actually showed up at my door. So let's get some first impressions. Allie, you took them for photo shooting, but what are your impressions in general?
I like it. I can tell a weight difference, even from the iPad Air, especially if I'm holding it without a case. I like it. I love that I'm not trying to spend 20 seconds unlocking my iPad because I have Touch ID now. So, I like it. I really do. With camera testing, we're going to post this one, I think, either today or tomorrow, but I'm looking at the iPhone 6 and the iPad Air 2 right now. And it's interesting. I didn't expect the iPad Air to have as good of a camera this time around as it does. But
yeah, you are a well-known iPad camera hater.
I know. I don't like it. Work, excuse. I'll never do it again. But it's got a good camera in it for the people that do want to take pictures with an iPad Air. It's a huge leaps and bounds over the original iPad Air in pretty much every aspect. And we posted that comparison already. It's got, I believe, 8 megapixels, which is the same as what the iPhone 6 has, the sensors, and there's some differences there. But overall, I'm pretty surprised with the quality of it. Not that I condone iPad photography, but it is what it is.
I'm going to come to your house and protest with a sign saying, set the iPad cameras free.
You're just going to take pictures of her with the iPad camera from...
That's what Heather, my girlfriend, she ratted me out on Instagram. Did you see that? I think she tagged you in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but she was disapproving as well.
That's not fair. It's for work, so...
Oh, yeah. Well, Peter has a gold iPhone, so.
He does. He sent me a picture, and he said, I didn't choose it. I'm like,
That's just Apple trolling him at this point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost entirely.
Well, at least they know him that well. What about you, Ren? What are your iPad impressions?
This is the first 10-inch iPad that maybe I'll consider keeping around. I've been like an iPad mini person since the iPad mini came out, and I really, really like the smaller size. But this is so light and it feels so good in my hand. Right here. That I legitimately feel like I can hold this one-handed and read one-handed, and can't really maneuver it one-handed because 9 inches is a little bit big for a thumb. But I really like. I thought that I was going to really hate carrying around a 10-inch iPad with my MacBook, with my 11-inch MacBook Air, which is why I downgraded to the Mini in the first place. It's like these devices are very similarly sized, but it feels great. It's wicked fast. That was the thing that like really blew me away, especially because I've been using iPads that are a couple years old at this point, aside from work-related duties. So I have an original iPad Mini and then a third generation iPad pre-Air, and the speed difference is shocking. And it feels faster than the iPhone 6. It makes my iPhone 6 feel slow because, of course, you've got the 8X processor in here. So I haven't been doing a lot of gaming on it yet. Although I have plans to download a couple things and try out that. But I have been editing on it, and iMovie runs really well on this. I haven't gotten Adobe's stuff yet, but I'm going to. Maybe. And
Pixelmator is fast on there too. I can wipe an entire person out of a photo in no time.
It's magic. I say magic a lot, but seriously, like I'm very impressed. And I did video with the camera as another iPad photography hater for work. And the video is actually not bad. It feels really awkward to try and hold this thing and remember where the camera is.
It's 120 frames per second max for slow-mo, right?
It's not
240.
Yeah, but even though and I'm gonna post my comparison video a little bit later today, hopefully. But even keeping it at 120, I think it's the light differential of the 120 on the iPhone 6, not the 120 of the iPhone 5S, which is to say that the camera is letting in more light and actually produces better low light slow motion video than the iPhone 5.6 did. And that may be a processor thing where Apple's just improved low light by tweaking how they input the signal data, or it just may be that there's a slightly better sensor in here than was in the iPhone 5S.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the camera is f2.4, it's not f2.2. I mean, in many ways, it's probably better than the iPhone 4S's 8-megapixel camera. It might be for different reasons, because the image signal processor is way better than the iPhone 5 one. It might end up evening out there, but I have no shame about iPads anymore. I've come to terms with iPad photography. It reminds me of those old-fashioned solid cameras where you have the accordion lens up front and the curtain over your back, and you're just standing there in the Wild West and taking your photos, and that's fine. But it does have good results, and if it's the only camera you have or the only camera you have conveniently located on you, you can now get those important memories and in a good form. The original iPad not having a camera, I guess, was understandable because Apple didn't think people would take photos. iPad 2 camera was just horrible. The 5-megapixel camera was iPod Touch level, and that was just not good. This is finally, whether you approve or disapprove of iPad photography, the results now, I think, at least, are good for people who want to do it, and I think that's a great step forward. The processor, you mentioned the A8X. I have trouble saying that word. The A8X processor.
It's a lot of similar sounds.
It is redonkulous. I think that's the technical term. If I was working at a Nantec, I think I would have to call it redonkulous, because it's an A8 just like the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, but the X in this case, the original X processors just had more graphics power. This has a third CPU, a 3-core CPU, and it's got a more powerful graphics engine, and it's got a separate 2-gigabyte RAM module. And yes, people are speculating that this will lead into whatever they unveil for the iPad Pro next year, maybe side-by-side apps or what have you. But even now, today, for the video processing apps Serenity mentioned, for Pixelmator, even for productivity apps, I don't know if you've had a chance to try them yet, Ali, but Google's Docs and other productivity apps, with really large documents, they would kind of suffer a little bit, even on the original iPad Air. This thing is just a monster.
Yeah, I didn't do any scientific-like tests, but I did load games that I know take a minute to load, and I set it side by side with my iPad Air, and there wasn't one instance where it wasn't a huge noticeable difference. And I never really felt like my iPad Air was slow.
No.
So
Apple made our iPad Air slow. That's the next gate.
I mean, you can, with Pixelmator, like, I was like, my mouth dropped when they, like, what was it, a goat that they just, like, bam, wiped away.
Come on.
I'm like, whoa. Like, I remember my 15-inch MacBook Pro getting angry over, content-aware tools. And the fact that you can now do that on an iPad, that's amazing. I've messed a little bit with Photoshop Mix and Lightroom because I have a Creative Cloud subscription, so I like that I can jump back and forth with personal pictures. Oh, it's a kitty. And people that are watching me audio only or listening to that will totally think I have ADD.
Kitty! Yes, a kitty just appeared on my screen, and then I attempted to pick her up, and she was not happy about that, so she went back to wandering around elsewhere.
I ran a bunch of benchmarks on the process. The Geekbench one are pretty much what you'd expect. It's just way faster because it's got those 3 cores instead of 2. But the GFX bench test is a Manhattan test that measures OpenGL 3.0 ES, 2.0 ES. I don't know, I'm not got English. I can't keep track of all these GPUs. But the performance was amazing. On all the previous A7 generation devices, you can get up to 9 frames, 9-point-something frames on Manhattan, and it looks choppy. But it ran smooth. It ran like 24.7 or 24.9 frames per second on the Manhattan test. And that's equally redonkulous. It's just, and I think Gruber said this really well, it's that on paper it looks like this CPU is about as good as a MacBook Air from a couple of years ago. But when you factor in Apple's Metal APIs and some of the lower level stuff they're doing, just with the frameworks in general, its performance, this is a perfectly capable Ultrabook if you are looking for an Ultrabook in a multi-touch, really mobile platform. And I think that's, the subtitle on the review, Serenity and I put up a review for the iPad today, was this is the one you've been waiting for. And I think that's really it. This is the first iPad where I can't say, oh, but the camera, oh, but this, oh, but that. Every aspect of this, Ren, to me at least, is a full-fledged device now.
There is nothing about this iPad that I do not like. And I know some people are still going to be like, well, I can't multi-screen apps, so it's not good enough. If you
Wait.
Yeah, I know. But, no, in general, like, if you like iOS and you like iPads, this is an amazing device. And especially with continuity and handoff, like, I can't wait. I don't think Pixelmator has handoff right now. But imagine if Pixelmator implements handoff, the idea of, oh, I'm going to work on this 5K, 4K image on my iPad and then just whoosh it to my Mac Pro or my Retina iMac to do like final tweaks and color corrections. Like there's a lot of potential here, and the fact that the iPad is becoming such a powerful on-the-go machine, especially for creative endeavors, I think productivity is very impressive too. But for me, like one of the things that I really, really like doing on mobile devices and iPads, and what I've really sort of gotten into is film editing, is video editing, because it feels a lot more natural to swipe, to cut, and to zoom to it, like to enhance the timeline and do multi-touch gestures in general to move things around. Physically moving clips, to me, feels like what film editing should be, right? We're going back. We went, from our big tables and our hand machined cutting of 35 millimeter film to this lovely, digital era, and we lost some of that tangibility. And being able to get it back on the iPad is so awesome. So like my peak, the iPad will be the absolute perfect device is when they start implementing handoff for some of those professional apps. Like if I can start my basic cutting on an iPad and do timing cuts on an iPad and then worry about color correction, etc. when I get to my bigger Mac at home, that would be huge. Oh,
you know what we need? Not to cut you off, but there's a Logic Pro controller that Apple makes for Logic. A Final Cut Pro controller would be so awesome on the iPad.
Good.
Because then you could have both. You could have the screen in front of you that you're doing the things that are best on a big computer, but you could have those hand tools because it does feel like cutting and clipping and doing all those things with film that used to be so satisfying because it was hands-on.
Absolutely. When the iPad Pro rumors started coming up a couple years ago, I was talking to my friend Rich Stevens, who does a webcomic called Diesel Sweeties, and he and I were theorizing of like, what if the iPad Pro doesn't necessarily run OS 10? It runs iOS, but it could dock to the computer in such a way that it could become an extension of whatever program we were using. So not even like a second screen like the Cintiq, but like exactly what you're describing, where it's like, a control panel that wirelessly interacts with your full your desktop machine, so you can have touch controls when you need touch controls, and then keyboard controls when you need keyboard controls. And then walk away, it's just a regular old iPad. So I feel like we may not be getting that exactly, but the things that are available to us with handoff and continuity and Bluetooth low energy and all of this stuff is making the world a really exciting place for multi-device users.
Well, this is also Continuity 1.0. Who knows what we're going to get in iOS 9 and iOS 10.
True.
We have a couple questions to get to. So this is from Curtis. Concerning productivity apps, do you think it's the third core or the 2 gigabytes of RAM that are making the difference? That's really hard to say on iOS. I know people criticize Apple for not going to 2 gigabytes sooner, but iOS is not Android. It's not a lot of operating systems. It doesn't have to deal with Java. It doesn't have to deal with the overhead of running all of the things that Java needs, including garbage collection, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to worry about supporting abstraction layers for alternate hardware. It's literally coded for the machine, so you can get away with a lot fewer resources because you're optimizing throughout the entire stack. I have to think all of that helps, though. I mean, the third core and the RAM, you can just do more things faster. It's just more capable. Here's another one. Having not seen the iPad 2 yet, does the new anti-glare coating help much in outdoor sunlight? Have you guys tried that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what your experiences were for camera, for photography. I actually took the iPad. I've been reading Pat Rothfuss's new sort of novella, which is awesome, by the way. It's the slow regard for silent things, or the silent regard for slow things. I mixed that up, but anyway, I decided to test out the new iPad by reading on it, and I took it outdoors and sat on my porch, and it's been really nice in Boston the past couple days, like actually warm and nice weather. So I sat and direct sunlight right on my screen. It was the first time where I didn't feel like I wanted to throw my iPad out, not out a window, but like throw my iPad to the ground and be like, you will never be a paperweight.
You are not a book.
You are not a book, exactly. But it's not perfect. You still get glare, but the glare is so much reduced. I was not expecting to be able to see the difference, but I absolutely can.
We took it, Georgia and Anthony and I took it out to get some photos, and we took it to the park, and Georgia was gaming on it. She was surfing the web, doing all sorts of things. And there's actually a photo in the review where I put the LED light halfway across both the iPad Air and the iPad Air 2, and you can just see the reduction in glare and the color shift that's occurring on the new anti-glare coating. And also because the panel is laminated now, there used to be 3 layers. There used to be the LED, there was LED backlight, but there was the LCD and the digitizer and the glass, 3 separate layers. So when light hit it, there was a lot of room for it to bounce around and create glare. And now all of that is fused into one layer, like it's been on the iPhone for several years. And that means that whole light reflection stuff is gone. The pixels look like they're inside the glass and not underneath it anymore. So there's a whole layer of intermediation that's removed. And it's just great. I mean, there was that horrible Amazon commercial 3 years ago where they were showing you that bikini chicks just couldn't use iPads to read. And that, I think, is, one of those classic things where year after year that just looks sillier and sillier in hindsight, because now you have the small iPad and you have these better screens. And while the Paperwhite, and I forget what the Paperwhite successor is called. Do you guys remember the new one?
The Voyage?
The Voyage, yeah. I mean, those look absolutely fantastic, but they just read. And I always want to do more than just reading, and now I sort of feel like I can do both without compromising the. And you can still walk away from direct sunlight. You were not few of us were chained in place and unable to change our angle, so it was never really a thing. But now it's even less of a thing.
Yeah, with the photography test, the only thing I will say is if you have polarized sunglasses on and you're taking a picture, it doesn't work too well.
That's a good point, because they didn't put the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus have a new polarization technology in them that tries to avoid the interference pattern when your glasses are polarized and the screen is, and that's not on the new iPad.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't notice it as big of an issue on my iPhone 6. I still don't like wearing sunglasses when I take a photo because I feel like I'm not seeing everything that's in the frame, and the colors are obviously distorted.
Yeah, you're changing with the entire thing.
But with the iPad, it's a much more noticeable difference than it is on the 6.
Interesting. I also tried out the iPad Mini 3. I got one of those, and it really is exactly the same as an iPad Mini 2. The only difference is that... Sorry, I'm just fixing my mic. Apparently I'm using the right mic. Does that sound better?
Yes.
All right, there we go. Hangouts. Sorry about that. Anyone's listening. I apologize. So it really is very similar, except you can get it in gold, except you can get 64 gigabytes and 128 gigabytes for less money than you could last year. But the Touch ID, we talked about this before. Once you have it on your phones, it's just there's just such a cognitive dissonance when you don't have it on all your devices, and having it now there. I have it on my iPhone, it's on my iPads. I never have to think. I just touch the thing and I'm in, and it's really nice. And the same thing with the iPad. If you have an iPad Air 1, I'd never tell you to go get an iPad Air 2. If you have an iPad Mini 2, I would never tell you to go out and get an iPad Mini 3. But if money is not an issue and you really want the better camera, the better processor, Touch ID, or you didn't get enough storage and you want to get 64 or 128 cheaper than you could last year, it's great. But if you've never had an iPad, again, going back to that part in the review, or you have an older iPad, this is, the iPad you have been waiting for.
Touch ID drove me nuts. So I did like a little Snoopy dance. When I first set it up, I'm like, yes!
The
sleep-wake button now is driving me nuts because I'm always hitting the volume button now because I'm so used to play iPhone.
It to be on the side. They retrained us. They retrained us.
I don't like that they did away with the switch.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Me. No, because I'm so used to, I have so many things on my desk. I like to just be able to vibrate switches on, like when we're going to do a podcast or do something, and now I have to flip open my iPad cover. And
I mean, Control Center does have the extra buttons now, so it's not terrible. And I know that they want to encourage people to use Control Center, but I really liked the rotation switch.
Yeah, and I used it for volume just because, I don't know. I feel I had less of a need to turn off rotation than I guess volume, like if it's sitting on my desk or I'm somewhere and it's in my purse.
The volume was kind of redundant, though, because if you just held down the volume down switch, it would turn off anyway.
Does it do that when it's asleep?
That I don't know. That's actually interesting.
I don't think it does. And that's my thing, because I have a smart cover in my iPad. So, if my iPad's in my purse or somewhere else, I can't just, fumble for a switch. I have to, actually pull it out and open my smart cover and first world problems, unlock my iPad or swipe up Control Center. That's annoying. I want my switch back.
I'm sorry, Allie.
So many problems.
So I got the new iMac. That arrived on Thursday as well, and I'm working on a review of that now. Peter, who couldn't be with us today, he's doing some roving correspondence. He got the new Mac Mini, so we're looking at those now, and we should have reviews for next week. But thumbs up on the new iMacs. That screen is so beautiful. I want to live in there. I say it again and again.
Yes, I mean, if I didn't love my portable machine so much, that would be in my house right now.
I want to make it portable. I want to be one of those people who takes it to a coffee shop and just sits down unabashedly with a giant iPad on the center table.
I would pretend not to know you, just like I will pretend not to know you if I see you taking a picture in the street with your iPad.
So judgmental.
You know what? The judging is good. You need to have a base level of judgment here.
Like shame is something good to have, says Cordelia Chase.
Mm-hmm.
Scratch my surface, and what do you find? More surface. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website, portfolio, and online store. Ren, Ali, I don't know about you guys, but I kept getting the question, can you make a website for me? Because I used to work in website design, and people knew that, and they would think that I would just make them a website, which is nice in theory, but I didn't scale, and I couldn't support them, and it would end badly for everybody. So now I just send them to Squarespace, and my work there is done.
Squarespace is really awesome. I, too, did a lot of web design growing up, and I love doing web design. But I can't do web design for every single person with every single different need. And Squarespace fills those needs so well, especially for people who need a simple website or a portfolio or like a restaurant that's not Flash. Thank you, Squarespace, for doing that. Because gosh knows Flash websites are like the bane of my existence right now. But yeah, I think it's pretty nifty, and I definitely recommend people there.
Yeah, those Flash websites make my soul bleed.
I think one thing people don't think of, too, when they do websites is upkeep and maintenance. And Squarespace is easy for people to learn and to update on their own. So sometimes people have a limited budget to work with when it comes to web development. And Squarespace is easy enough that you can learn how to edit things and post things on your own and not have to rely on paying a web developer an hourly fee to do that for you.
I mean, it's awesome. If you do know how to code, you can do your own HTML, your own CSS, your own JavaScript. You can make it exactly the way you want everything to be. But if not, it's simple and easy. There's beautiful designs. It's absolutely responsive. It'll scale across phones, tablets, and computers. Drag and drop. Plans start at $8 a month. That includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year. You can even start your own online store. So here's what I want you to do. Go to Squarespace, start up an account. You don't need a credit card. You need nothing. You can get started today. You can try it out. If and when you decide to sign up, just make sure you go to squarespace.com and use the offer code iMore. That'll get you 10% off your first purchase, and it'll help you support the show because, sincerely, Squarespace makes better webs, and the web gets better with your website. Yay, Squarespace. So moving on to other news, Tim Cook today, big op-ed in Bloomberg. Tim Cook has been widely rumored to have been gay for many, many years. It was sort of an open secret, but today he did an op-ed editorial where he hearkened back to his personal heroes, Robert Kennedy. It was Robert Kennedy, right? Yeah, Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. And he basically said that if him writing this helped anyone else who was struggling with their self-identity or their self-worth or their ability to contribute in a way that they wanted to. Wow, I'm getting a giant echo all of a sudden. Contribute the way that they wanted to, then it was well worth it. And I forget the exact quote. I don't have it in front of me. But there was a line that he said about the bricks that you lay towards making a better society, and this was his brick. And it was just like, I don't want to dwell on it because it's sad that we still have to dwell on these kind of things in the year that we live in now. But I'll put a link in the show notes, and I just recommend everybody read it because regardless of who you are, of what sexual orientation or religion or background or culture, there's always something about you that you have probably felt that you were made ashamed of or didn't feel part of or felt excluded because of. There is something all of us can identify in that, and the idea that we don't have to be that way, that we can just be proud of who we are and contribute to the highest levels imaginable, I think is incredibly worth reading and worth listening and worth understanding.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much what he was talking about, so much as he was willing to stand up and be a role model, basically. Take his position as someone who is a very influential person in our society. He is a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and I mean, Apple is very, very highly looked upon by creatives, by students, by adults and children alike. And for him to be able to take a stand, and you notice, like, a lot of people were like, "Oh, Tim Cook is revealing his personal life." Woo-hoo. The entire thing of that Business Week article wasn't even like, there's very little that he actually says about his personal life. In fact, he says more about his hobbies aside from his sexual orientation than he does about his sexual orientation or whether he has a longtime partner or any of that stuff. And that's legitimate. None of that stuff is our business. We don't need to know who he's dating or what's going on that. But the fact that he's willing to say, this is who I am, this is one part of who I am, and I want to show everybody out there, who might be the same or might be different, that like you can be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, you can be a fitness nut, you can be a big supporter of your college football team, you can come out of the South and be a wonderful person and also have a different sexual orientation than your friend. Yeah. And it's just that to me it's really heartwarming, it's really touching, and I'm really like I am glad to cover Apple on days like this. I really am.
Yeah, so kudos, and again, link in the show notes. Please go check that out. In weirder Apple news, there was a little bit of a brouhaha. It didn't affect customers at all. It was totally transparent to them. But yesterday, James Thompson, who develops pCalc, was called by Apple and said that he'd have to remove the widget functionality because putting a calculator into the Today view was sort of beyond the scope of what Apple wanted extensions to be. And we got there was a lot of coverage of it because this is not the first time stuff like that has happened. Anyone who's followed Apple for a while knows that a couple of weeks ago it happened with app launchers or action launchers in the Today view. When the iPad was first launched, it happened with apps that had multiple window workflows. When the iPhone was first launched, it happened with tethering apps, and it's not so much that Apple doesn't allow them, but that they get approved, and then after they're approved and maybe even featured in the App Store, they then get retroactively unapproved, or they get unapproved at a later time. And that makes it really difficult for developers because they're investing their time and their effort and their money and their livelihood into this, and it's almost learned helplessness. They don't know if it's going to be allowed in the store, and even once it is, they can't relax because maybe it'll be disallowed in the future. Luckily, in this case, it got kicked upstairs at Apple, and the decision was reversed, and calculator widgets are now allowed again in the App Store. But I think it just contributes. It's just one of the many problems that are facing app developers. And I don't know how about you guys feel about it, but I feel at some level this affects me as a customer. I'm not going to be able to get the apps that I want if developers aren't confident and enabled enough to create those apps without having to worry about stuff like this.
Oh, I agree. 100%. And I think what I found ironic about it was, Apple had featured it. pCalc has been featured in the App Store, I think, since iOS 8 was launched.
Under specifically Notification Center widgets.
Yeah, and like great apps for iOS 8, it was in there too, like just in the general category. So like that was just very confusing to me. And if I were a developer and I put myself in their shoes, it's okay, well, I invested all this time and countless hours into developing this, and now it gets pulled and I have to do something. I don't know, that to me, that's very unreliable, and you can't count on that, and that's not something that you're not going to get apps that way, because if someone thinks it's going to be right on that edge, they're just not going to do it.
Yeah, you're not going to invest months and months of manpower, and most of these small development shops are 1 or 2 people, maybe 5 if you're really lucky. You're not going to spend 6-7 months developing something really new and exciting and innovative, with the chance that Apple is just going to be like, nope, sorry. And with Mac apps, we saw, of course, BBEdit has decided to take itself out of the Mac App Store. Mac apps, you have that alternative. iOS apps, there's no way to sideload. You have to go through the App Store. And for Apple to lay out a set of guidelines one day and then completely change them months later, I understand if people are taking advantage of it and doing horrible loopholes. But a calculator widget, I did Clockwise earlier today with Jason Snell and Dan Morin, and they pointed out there's a calculator widget in Notification Center on the Mac that's Apple's made, and they're essentially identical programs. You change 2 lines of code and they can be run on iOS. So if Apple's saying, yes, calculator widgets are A-okay in Notification Center on the Mac, but boo-hoo for Notification Center on the iPhone or iPad, it's well, that's a little bit of a double standard. I can understand
if it's a resource issue, which
sure.
Think it is. I don't, Launcher, I didn't really understand that one either, because essentially Launcher did a lot of what Launch Center Pro does, and I was really excited to see if Launch Center Pro would do something with Notification Center. And then when Launcher got pulled, I was like, oh, well, never mind.
Yeah, they're not going to do that anymore. And it's not like Launcher is really doing anything all of that different. Launcher was a lot, basically, for those of you who didn't see it before it got pulled, you could set up shortcuts for certain things on your Mac, on your iOS device, like opening TweetBot or calling this person, which I thought was really awesome. And then Apple pulled that app saying, oh, nope, that's not something we want functionality-wise. But there are apps that offer links to other apps, just not multiples. And it's like, okay.
It kind of did what Launch Center Pro does, but in Notification Center. And, I email Rene a lot, so I could set an action that I could swipe down one time, tap a button, and it would automatically compose an email to Rene. Then all I had to do is fill it out and send it. So
that's how that works.
Yeah. You wonder how I do that so fast, don't you?
I just figured it was ninja skills. I mean, there's a couple things to decompress, and I think part of the problem is that the App Store process is completely opaque, not only to customers, but to a lot of developers. And there's a few things to break down. So the app getting approved and it's showing up in the editor's, the featured section, that's easily explained. So App Store actually isn't one thing. App Store exists across Apple. So, for example, developer relation. I'm getting a giant echo again. Gotta fix this Google Hangout stuff. Developer relations and App Store review are under Phil Schiller, who's the senior vice president of global product marketing. And then App Store, the service, the management and editorial are under Eddie Q, who's the senior vice president of services. And those are two totally separate organizations at Apple. So once the apps are uploaded and approved, the editors feature them, and all they can tell is that the app has been approved. So they're not making any judgment about the appropriateness of the app. They just know that it's in the store or it's going to be at the store at a certain date, and they program what they want to feature. This is a great app, I'm going to feature it. So the app being featured in itself has nothing to do with the review or the guidelines or anything like that. Also, reviewers are people. Like it's not an automated process. There are different people looking at it. And we've seen often in the past that what passes with one reviewer might get held up by another. Reading Apple's documentation, pCalc probably shouldn't have been approved the first time, or at least it should have prompted a discussion, because Apple said in the developer docs that it was meant for quick actions and quick bits of information. And with pCalc, you could actually sit there and just use pCalc and Notification Center, which they consider to be a full app functionality, and that is not allowed in Notification Center or in the Today widget. And that's actually different than Yosemite. That's why Apple has a calculator widget in Yosemite and doesn't have one in iOS. It's there. They still treat them differently. You can argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they do. So at some point, a reviewer saw it and recognized that guideline and figured out that that shouldn't be in there, and that prompted this. And then it got a bunch of attention and it got kicked higher up, and there are higher up levels at Apple. And they looked at it and said, okay, that's fine. Now, whether it was fine based on the original rule or whether they thought the original rule wasn't great, it's hard to tell. But the end result is that that is perfectly fine now. It just created a lot of stress for the developer, created a lot of stress for people inside Apple, because there's a lot of people inside Apple who really want this to work well, and a lot of stress for the customers who do follow these stories online, because they panicked and thought they were going to lose functionality that was really important to them. And that sucks for everybody. And it leads me back, and I've talked about this offline, but it makes me still think that we need a vice president of App Store at Apple, because right now you have Federici's org that makes the frameworks, you have Q's org that delivers a service, and you have Schiller's org that filters the apps and liaises with developers. And that's a lot of different people to move through. But if you had a vice president of App Store who was, empowered, engaged, high profile, and his only job was to make App Store as awesome a product as the iPhone is, or that, or the iPad is, or anything like that is just their one job, then I think you could get a lot of action out of this. The same way, and tell me if I'm out to lunch on this, Ren, but the same way that when Federici took over all software, or I've took over all design, that it just made such better communications and collaboration.
No, I think absolutely. And I mean, there were definitely growing pains when that happened. But for the App Store to be split across multiple levels, I mean, I'm sure that this was a miscommunication somewhere in the ranks, where someone low management, someone high management, we're all like thumbs up, and then someone in middle management was like, no, this shouldn't be here. And then high management comes down and is like, wait, no, James Thompson's been developing for the platform for 20 years. He's not abusing the system. And it's also something where, like, those review guidelines, I feel like shouldn't be so black and white. It's like certain things, fine. Like, obviously, you don't want to run malicious code. But if app developers are, blurring the lines a little bit to create really, really awesome software that's good for Apple and good for its users, then shouldn't be Apple, be in the best interest of like helping those people out, whether either saying you can't do that now, but give us 6 months, and like, or like, you can't do that now, but wait and see and come to WWDC. Here's your lottery invitation. Like, you want to encourage great developers who are doing good things to continue developing for your platform. And you're not going to be able to do that if if one, what's the two heads talking or something like that. If you have, a multi-headed beast that's all trying to contradict what everyone else is saying.
Yeah, it's really, so one of the problems I think is that it's not black and white. And Steve Jobs said that when he first introduced the iPhone, that this big category called unforeseen. And I think that for Apple, the putting a calculator in iOS and the widget thing, it was unforeseen because they probably didn't think anybody could do it. Given for those who don't know, there's a lot of limitations in what can run in the widgets because iOS has a lot less available memory than the Mac does. And James Thompson is a terrific coder, and he worked on the Finder at Apple, man, knows his way inside and out of Objective-C, and he got it to work. And that might have not been anticipated, and so it came in, and a reviewer saw it, and it worked, it didn't crash. I mean, they did a technically correct job, and they approved it, and everyone saw it, thought it was great, and it got featured. And then someone realized, wait, this is counter to the stated goals of Today widgets, where they're supposed to be way lighter than what this app is doing, so we have to unapprove it. So like all of it taken by itself makes sense, but when you look at it from the top, it makes no sense. And I just don't think, like, Eddie Q is super busy, Phil Schiller is super busy. They have tremendous responsibilities across an incredible range of portfolios and reports and everything. And it just, again, if there was one person who was looking at all this stuff, I think it would be taken care of way before it hit any of our desks. Take a quick break so I can tell you about Swirl. Swirl is a photo framing app, and it's available first on the iPhone. So I don't know if you're anything like me, but you go visit your parents, whether it's at home or at the office, and there's pictures of you from like 20 years ago. Everyone they know still thinks you're 5 years old or something. And it's just horrible because, especially now, back then the excuse was it's just too expensive to make prints and to buy frames. And now it's just too inconvenient to take, my photos are on my iPhone. They're not on my, they're not on a camera. I can't just get them developed. Well, now they have no more excuses because Swirl lets them take high quality frames. They come in 4 colors. There's wall and desk options from 4x6 to 16x20. Allie, you could have one for Kaya right now on your desk.
How do you know I don't?
You might have gotten one while I was reading that ad. It was so compelling to you.
I did. Ordered one right up. All things Sheeb.
Yeah, well, Ren, I like the idea of having real-life things, because I think the digital stuff is nice, it's convenient, it's a good way to store a million things, but you lose the real-world presence of that one thing that's important to you.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of all things digital, as evidenced by the sheer amount of devices I have around me at any one time. But I have a really nice DSLR, and I actually like printing those photos, and in fact, those are my secret, cheapo, Christmas gifts, is I like to choose really nice photos that I've taken of people throughout the years and then give them photos as Christmas gifts.
That's brilliant. And the nice thing about Swirl is that it's really affordable. Including delivery, it starts as low as $19.99, and you can get 20% off if you use discount code iMore. You can get a printed, framed, delivered photo with gift wrapping and gift messaging, perfect for the ho-ho-ho holiday season, for just $16.99. It's super easy. You just download the app. It's in the App Store, or you can go to www.getswirl.com. That's swirl.com. Use promo code iMore, and you will have actual physical representations of the people and things you care about in your universe. The other sort of thing I wanted to bring up was Pixelmator. We mentioned it before. It launched, but it launched at $5. And I don't know how I feel. I actually don't know how I feel. I don't like that. I like the idea. I understand people want cheap apps. And I understand it's in a lot of people's best interest to have cheap apps, because $5 you don't spend on Pixelmator is $5 you can spend on, a coffee or something. Or, if apps are cheap, people are more inclined to buy an iPhone because the total cost of ownership is cheaper because the apps don't cost very much. Fine, whatever. I want a certain class of application. I want those apps that you guys mentioned. I want those video editors. I want those amazing pixel. I want I want an environment where developers know that if they are incredibly innovative, if they invest their time, if they create something new and something marvelous, that they will be compensated, that they can feed their families off that they can work on the other version. And it still feels so many years in that we're not creating an environment that promotes the next generation of killer apps, the next HyperCard, the next VisiCalc, the next thing that defines a platform. And I don't want to rag on the Pixelmator guys because they obviously think that this is going to move a lot of copies for them. But at $5, that's just not sustainable for me. I want to give them more.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, I think the general consumer has decided what's okay and what's not in the App Store a couple of years ago when they raised their wallets and voted for freemium models like Candy Crush and other games. I don't see how $5 for a piece of software like that would be sustainable as well, especially considering I don't think Pixelmator is really geared towards your everyday person. You're talking photographers, creators, designers, people that are familiar and know the ins and outs of, you're going to have people that are going to buy it, but, it's not Instagram filters. It's not Afterlight. It's not, it's a lot more advanced than some of the other tools. So I would have thought that a higher price point would have maybe been necessary to make it sustainable, considering it's a little niche.
There was, I think 2 or 3 years ago at Singleton, Michael Jurowitz, who at the time was not at Apple. He is back at Apple now, but he gave a talk about economics, and he has an economics degree. Who knew? And he said that if you double the price of your app and you lose less than half your customers, you're making money. And this year at Singleton, Alan Pike, who also used to be at Apple, he's not anymore, was talking about one of his apps, which is an app that is for DJing at weddings, and it's a very niche app, but he doubled the price of it, and his revenue has risen 40% because people are willing to pay for that functionality. And some people on Twitter, and I hate giving them attention, but they're like, "Oh, you're just price gouging me." But that's not how economics works. It's like your boss coming to you one day and saying, "I'm going to pay you half as much." You should get what you're worth, and these apps should get what they're worth. And I don't think they're getting what they're worth now. And it bothers me to the extent that I think that we're not going to get the apps we want because they can't get what they're worth.
Yeah, and I think actually a lot of this comes down to one major flaw that I perceive as an App Store issue, which is the lack of trials. And I know a lot of developers lowered their price initially because, I don't want to turn off people who would buy my software but can't because they don't have a free trial. And then that really quickly turned into, oh dear, well, we're stuck at the $5 price point. And some developers have kind of worked around that. Sorry, I have dogs barking in my ear. Some developers have worked around that by doing the freemium model, by saying, my app's free, my app's $5, but if you really like it, you can buy all of these extra tools for $5, $10, $15, $20, $30. And that's not a bad model, and actually I'm kind of disappointed that Pixelmator didn't do something like that, where they're like, hey, that cool clone tool that you saw on stage, or the remove tool that you saw on stage at the Apple event, that's $30, but the basic app is free. I would love to see developers do that, because I think there are people who would pay for that kind of functionality.
Yeah, it's important to point out that developers are not allowed to do, in-app purchases are in some ways are a trial. I know James Thompson, the PCalc we were talking about before, he has PCalc Lite, which is a free version, and the full version of PCalc is $10. And you can do certain things, like the app Paper by, is it 53? Paper by 53? Paper by some number. 53. Ren's giving me the Unicode thumbs up.
53.
You can buy that, and then you can buy additional tools for extra money, which is a good model, and they actually won an Apple Design Award for that model. But you can't do time-based trials. So you can't download an app and use it for 30 minutes or use it for a day and then pay to keep using it. Apple expressly does not allow that. And that's unfortunate, too, because that's a very common model in, it's going back to classic shareware, where you'd get a time-based trial and then you'd buy it, and if you liked it, you could keep using it. So these tools are just not at developers' disposal, and even things like paid upgrades, which would incentivize the developer to keep working on an app. Right now, the market is to make a lot of shallow apps for low money and then make a new app instead of continuing to develop that app. And again, that's not the software I want. I have an iPad 2 Air now, so an iPad Air 2 now. That's the correct order of words in that name. And I want to do all those amazing things that Apple AX processor will let me do and look at it in an amazing laminated screen. And I want more apps like Pixelmator, and I want developers to feel empowered and comfortable and safe and, not learned helplessness. so that they'll make them. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to keep saying VP of App Store until that's proven not correct. All right, so Serenity, you and Ali have been writing about handoff all week, and you started with AirDrop, and you actually figured out the secret Konami code to unlocking it?
Yeah,
or AirDrop,
actually,
sorry.
technically, Ali figured out the secret Konami code to unlocking AirDrop. I just followed her tutorial. But I couldn't get AirDrop Mac to iOS working at all on my machine until I switched. I had to switch Wi-Fi networks, and then I ran through all the turn everything off, turn everything back on again, restart both devices, and then actually connecting first. I first connected via FaceTime calling, and then once I got that working, then I went to AirDrop, and AirDrop started working, and then I went to Handoff, and Handoff started working. So it's like a weird, yeah, it is the Konami code. It's like, do these things in this order, and maybe this will work. Obviously, for compatible devices. I have no tricks for those of you who are on non-continuity supported Macs, although there is GitHub software that with certain external cards will let you potentially use continuity, but I have not experimented with that, so I cannot speak from firsthand knowledge if that actually works.
I don't know if we talked about this already, but continuity is a blanket term for a lot of different features that require a lot of different technology. So, for example, AirDrop uses Bluetooth LE to negotiate the connection and then transfers over Wi-Fi direct because it's faster. Handoff uses Bluetooth LE to broadcast the activities that you're doing, and then again, Wi-Fi direct to the actual handoff. SMS relay, all you have to do is have devices on the internet. Doesn't matter if they're on the same network or not. Doesn't matter if they're on Bluetooth or not. They just have to be on the internet. And call relay, though, you have to be on the same Wi-Fi network because it essentially places a call over your Wi-Fi network between the devices. And Ali, I think a lot of the reason why people are confused by this is because it is all these different things they're dealing with.
Yeah, here's a question, though, and this is something that I didn't realize. I thought that, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, with SMS relay, does your iPhone or iPad have to be in the same, or does your Mac or iPad have to be in the same vicinity as your phone, or once you turn that on, do you know what I mean? Like, is there a radius, or?
I don't have any green bubble friends, so I don't know. That's horrible to say,
I
but
haven't tested that yet, but I feel like I received a text message on my iPad from one of my phone numbers that was, the phone was at home, and
that should work, because again, you just have to be on the internet.
Yeah, I was at my parents' house. So I thought it was like a proximity thing, but I guess that doesn't go through Bluetooth. It's going through as long as the devices are connected to the internet. It doesn't have to be the same.
It goes through Apple's messaging service, which it's the same way that you can get an iMessage even if you're not in the same room. It's just once it registers with that, it'll arrive on your iPhone and then get transited over the internet to wherever you are.
Nice. Okay, I thought it was like a range thing, so I didn't understand that completely. A lot of people with continuity in general, whether it's handoff, anything, whether you can't get AirDrop to work. I know this worked for Peter. Peter could not get Instant Hotspot to work. For some reason, changing the name of your iOS device, it automagically works. I have no idea why that's worked for a lot of people. I don't know if it's the identifier that maybe gets scrambled or corrupt, or I don't know, but a lot of people said that changing their device name seemed to work, and I know Peter went through everything, and that's the thing that worked for him. So I don't know why, but if you can't get some feature of continuity working, try changing your device name by just going into Settings, General, About, and then just change it to something else, and then reboot all the things, and for a lot of people, it starts working.
There have been, and it's interesting to get your guys' opinion on this, because there's been some complaints about privacy with continuity, and it's similar to the complaints about privacy. We didn't cover this before on the show because we've been so busy talking about the new devices and things, but there was a bit of a brouhaha about suggested search for Spotlight, because you'd start typing in Spotlight and you'd get internet results, and people realized that what you were typing was being shared with Apple so that they could, discover where you were and give you, for example, the coffee shop near you and those kinds of things. And that disturbed some people. You could turn it off, but it was turned on by default. And some people said Apple should ask you, and others said, no, Apple puts up 9 pop-ups already. I'm tired of them. I don't even bother reading them anymore. And the same thing is happening with continuity, because continuity, in order to transit data, uses iCloud, which means that it hits Apple's service. So if one guy was complaining that he just opens up a bunch of documents and types things in them, including passwords and other bits of information and love letters and whatever, and then he gets the handoff icon, opens it up, and that's suddenly there, and that means that it transited through Apple's server to get there, and he was uncomfortable with that. And it's getting to a point where I don't even know, for example, if my mother or father asked me how this works, I could explain it to them on a technical level, but I don't know how Apple could present it to them. They're blurring the lines between online and on-device so much, and this absolutely applies to Google and Google accounts, although I think the presumption with Google is that it's online, where the presumption with Apple is it's not really as clear. How to inform people that a lot of the functionality they're enjoying does require some form of online transit.
Yeah, same thing with dictation, and we had a little bit of an issue not with Apple but with custom keyboards.
Oh,
so
yeah,
if you install a keyboard,
send your private information.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly think it comes down to how well that information is encrypted. Like, the reason why we trust dictation and trust Siri is that it's all anonymized and encrypted. So you can never trace back what I'm saying to Siri to my device. It's just, random Apple user number 46254 said this, but that device, that identification number doesn't actually match up with anything. But I mean, we've got to give some, right? If we want our devices to be automatical, we can't completely say, no, you can't have any access to my privacy either. The reason why things like 1Password work so well is that we trust that, we're going to put all of these passwords into a central database, which then syncs online. But we have a encryption key that we know that unlocks all of those passwords, and then on top of that, 1Password has its own security. Like, we have to give a little to get a little, and then there's the Apple way of doing it, and then all the way on the other end of the spectrum, there's the Google way of doing it, which is just, let's take information from everywhere. But, if we want our devices to work like we say we want our devices to work, we need to give up a little bit of information. It's just the matter of how securely it's transferred.
Yeah, and with the suggested Spotlight suggestions, Apple would generate the ID and destroy it 15 minutes later, and they only kept it for 15 minutes to do the occurrence thing. So, for example, if Ali said, where's a coffee shop, and then asked for a phone number, it could assume that she wanted the phone number for a coffee shop, which again is providing functionality. I do understand that people feel like they're being opted in and they feel like they're not being disclosed. But I am so annoyed. Every time I reboot a device, I get pop-ups on every other device saying this is now being used for FaceTime, this is now being used for iMessage, this is now being used, and I can't turn them off fast enough, and I don't read them anymore. And I know that I should, but I have such disclosure fatigue that the idea of every single service that goes online having a pop-up every time something changes, it fears me with Halloween-level dread.
Due diligence, though.
Yeah.
You got to cover your bases, otherwise people will yell at you for not covering your bases.
It's hard, right? Because a couple of years ago, I guess it's more than this. When Vista came out, I want to say that there was a big like mocking video made by people who liked Apple, being like, "Oh man, Windows asks you to do everything. Prompts you to, like, if you want to sneeze," or and I think about that a lot when I get all of these pop-ups on my varying iOS devices and Macs and in my email. It's like, obviously, this is being done for security reasons. But isn't there a way that I can say, hey, this device is trusted, I don't need any more information on that device unless I already say so?
Yeah, it's really difficult because, for example, Google Now, I have a Nexus 5 and I turned it on and it said, do you want to use Google Now? And I said, yeah, because Google Now is kind of awesome. Then it says, do you give Google permission to track every website you go to? And I said, no. And I have like nothing to hide in my website. It's probably, Ali would make fun of some of the movies that I look up probably, but there's nothing to hide. But the idea that Google would watch every place I go on the web just felt creepy to me. So I turned it off. And to some people, I'm sure the idea of Spotlight doing suggestions or handoff transiting documents is just as creepy, and they would turn it off if they got that disclosure. And I just wonder that if I'm going to have to get over sort of my Google fear, and other people are going to have to get over sort of their iCloud fear, or we're going to have to live in a world where we have substantially less functionality than the Internet of Things would otherwise allow.
Well, you don't have to get over it. You just have to decide what's more important to you. Do you want that feature set and be willing to give up a little bit of privacy to do that or not? So, it's a trade-off. So what do you want? That's kind of the same thing with, some of these other mobile payment services. So, you got to give a little to get a little. That's, I remember when Touch ID first came out, it was a huge, I'm not giving that phone my fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, don't use it. You don't have to. You don't have to use Siri. You're prompted when you set up an iPhone whether or not you want to use Siri. Do people just blaze right past that? Sure. But it's there, and I'm pretty sure that screen even has links where you can find out more information about it.
Yeah, so does suggested Spotlight. I don't know if Handoff did. I didn't check.
Yeah, but I mean, you have the option. There's easy ways to enable or disable, but if you're using them, I think Apple makes sure to do their due diligence and cover their bases as far as, if your device is linked to something. That could also broach a security issue, too, if one of your devices is stolen. So it's trusted, but it's not trusted anymore. But if someone just turns that off, you have no way of untrusting it.
Yeah, well, I do like having settings in iCloud.com. Like you can erase credit card numbers and things like that. If there's a way to manage trusted devices there and be like, oh, this got stolen, as soon as I hit this is lost, then
Find
My iPhone, I think.
You kind of can, but here's the trick with Find My iPhone, and this is what I figured out. If you want to completely remove a device from your account and have it have no association with it, it has to be offline. So if they have the device turned on, you cannot remove it from your account.
But you can track it.
You can. If they don't. Yeah. Well, if you find My iPhone turned off, though, I think it's still, if the device is on, I don't know. I've had some wonky things. Like, I have an iPad Air that was swapped out at Apple that still shows up in my account. I have a MacBook Air that I've never owned that still shows up under my devices.
What is Heather doing when you're not looking?
Yeah, I don't know. I have 2 MacBook Airs that show up under devices in iCloud.com, and I've only ever owned 1 MacBook Air. So I don't really know what that is.
All right, well, we're going to look into all this stuff and hopefully restore sanity to the known universe. In the meantime, we're going to answer a few questions. First one is from 12 South. Haha. Who makes a stand for Mac Pro to rest horizontally? Sorry, couldn't resist. Why you do, 12 South? Nicely played. Nicely played, Andrew.
Very nice plug. I'll allow it because the stand is pretty cool and it makes your Mac Pro look like a turbojet engine. So
I'll send us all free ones.
Yeah. Mac Pros too, 12 South.
Yeah, I need one of those too, so include that.
So this is from Bryce. Any plans on doing a roundup of the best credit debit cards to use for Apple Pay? What would that mean? Is that like the ones that work the best or the ones that give you the most rewards? Or I'm not sure.
We covered the ones that work. I think Serenity covered that right from the start. Here's the problem. Credit and debit cards are so personal. What rewards I want might not be what rewards, I might want cookies as rewards and Serenity might want frequent flyer miles. I don't know.
Ice cream cake.
I mean, I don't know. I don't really know how to approach that because it's so different for so many people.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I did use a website to pick my credit card. What is it called? Oh, there's a great website online that compares NerdWallet. There we go. NerdWallet is really awesome for looking at rewards programs. So I would look at, if you're looking into a new credit card that you also want to look for Apple Pay, I would look first at our site or at another site that has the list of here are the banks that are participating, and then go to NerdWallet and figure out which of those applicable ones, and they allow you to filter with sliders, which is pretty cool. Which of those folks also lets me, do all of these things that I want for my credit card.
And are accessible in my area.
Exactly.
Do not show that website to Nick Arnott. He will lose days there. Athena wants to know, which would you choose for a first-time iMac 21.5-inch buyer? The 1 terabyte serial ATA drive or 1 terabyte Fusion drive? i5 or i7?
Fusion i7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I concur. Fusion drive just because you get the benefits of the speed plus the volume, and the i7 because why wait for an i5?
Yeah, I think honestly the Fusion drive, for people who have never owned an SSD or anything SSD-like, it's like night and day when the computer's starting up, and any time that lessens your startup time and your between apps time is a good investment. Straight hard drives.
I agree. Down with the platters. Douglas wants to know, why has Instant Netflix not updated their app for iPhone 6 Plus? Big companies seem to be less nimble than small companies. And, the indie devs updated really fast, and the big companies are taking their time.
Mm-hmm. Facebook.
Yes. Ulf wants to know, problems with unresponsive keyboard on iPhone 6 Plus when iCloud Drive is on. Any explanation? I've noticed with iCloud and systems in general that, for example, on my MacBook, my iMac, it beachballed trying to access iCloud Drive, and I know someone else at beachball trying to access iCloud Keychain. When the system is hitting iCloud services, there's some sort of bottleneck going on. I'm not sure what it is, but it feels like a bug, and I hope it gets fixed because it's still opaque to a user.
Anything new in iCloud Drive, iCloud Photo Drive, or Photo Library, whatever, iCloud blank. Anything of those in iOS 8 that was introduced, they're buggy. Expect it. I feel like it was kind of half-baked. Some stuff I would have preferred. Like, I would have rather waited for iCloud Photo Library until the Photos app launched for the Mac. I just felt like that would have been a better solution.
This interim solution is very difficult.
Yeah, some of the stuff, and I hate to say it, some of the stuff like handoff and continuity and iCloud Photo Library and iCloud Drive, it's reminding me of Windows Vista and all of the issues that you had that came along with it. And
can't believe you said the V word.
I know, terrible word, but I mean the pop-ups and just the irritation with having to reboot all of the things. I think I saw a meme, whatever you want to call it, the other day. Someone posted on Twitter, it said, "This is why I stopped using Windows," and I think it said something about, "Did you try rebooting everything?" And that's what we're suggesting to everyone right now, but it is what it is. I'm sure it'll get better. Kind of reminds me of the iMessage debacle when that first launched and things not syncing properly. And
I was joking with Serenity that it reminded me of having to load early Mac extensions in specific orders.
Yeah.
Or they would conflict. This is from Majeske. I hope that's the right word. iPad Air 2 Cellular has frequent pop-up to sign up for data plan. Is there any way to turn that off?
Take the SIM out.
That does work.
Yeah. SIM out.
Then you'll get a no SIM inserted error once when you reboot.
Once and never again.
Yeah. Well, I think every time you reboot, you get that.
I don't think so. I don't think my iPad Air's done that. I don't know.
Maybe after you update it, something. I get it very rarely, but I do still get it.
It's a lot less than the sign up for a data plan.
David Muziak wants to know, have you noticed the sound resonance on the back of the iPad Air 2? I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Some people have said, some people have said that the iPad Air 2 is so thin that you can actually feel the music vibrating inside it when you're playing it.
I can kind of feel that a little bit in the first gen iPad Air, I think. So not enough to where it would bother me, but it's a thin device.
Neil wants to know, with the Apple A8X processor, why can't we have a full Chrome browser that runs full Google apps? I'd love that more.
Well, we go back to the privacy problem. That's the easiest way to describe that. It's not so much a processor power problem, it's a privacy issue. It's the same reason why, WebM won't run in WebKit right now.
Yeah, I mean, WebGL used to be, they used to be unable to secure that, and they rewrote the whole driver stack, and now WebGL is secure. You can still only use the WebKit rendering engine on iOS. You can't put in your own engine, and Chrome split from WebKit. Now they make their own flavor of it called Blink. They also make their own JavaScript engine. I think it's still called V8. And other things. I don't think there's a real advantage. I think they're all so good now and so competitive that if there is a temporary one, everyone catches up quick. Google, in some ways, Google is breaking the internet with what they're doing because they're making apps that only work due to specific hooks in Chrome or Chrome OS. And I've likened it before to IE6 with ActiveX, where things would only work in those, and then you'd be locked into those browsers. The people at Google are by no means trying to, own the internet. Well, they are, but not in the same ways that Microsoft is. And I think some things, like for example, one of their new services just launched, and you can only use it in Chrome, but that's because they haven't had time to port it over to Safari yet. So I'm sure there are people in Google who would much rather you be locked into Chrome, but I think there's way more better angels at Google than there ever were at Microsoft. But still, there's going to be things that they do with Chrome OS that they code specifically for Chrome that just won't work in an iOS environment. But that's why you have apps. Like the web is the web on desktop for a reason. Apps are apps on mobile for a reason. In almost every case, an app that pulls from the web will provide you with a better experience than just going to a website. And that's why I think Google makes Sheets and Documents and all that for iOS rather than just try to lock you into the browser. I think. I'm not sure. Ren, anything else on the agenda? Anything you want to bring up?
Nothing really. I'm currently annoyed at my iPhone 6 and I don't know if anybody else is having this problem where unlocking it will occasionally get me an unresponsive screen, and that's been like my frustration right now, where it's like I'll turn it on and then just tapping won't work. Turning it off and on again fixes it, but I have to I'm like, what did I do?
I have that problem when I try to delete an app. If I hover the little wiggle screen, I tap to delete, and then it freezes for about 20 seconds, and then it either asks me if I want to delete that app or it just continues wiggling until I turn the screen off and on again, and then it's fine. But I think it's a springboard issue.
Yeah, I think so too.
Going on.
My camera shutter button is better now. I don't know what changed, but for a while I would turn on the camera and then the shutter button wouldn't work. I could just tap, 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 nothing would happen, and all of a sudden it would be in burst mode. But that seems to not happen now, so I don't know what magic was applied, but it's fixed. Oh, we didn't talk about currency and MCX, and the reason for that is we spent an hour talking about it on Vector.
So much. There's been so much about that this week. I just want to do things that are unbecoming for a family podcast with my hands right now towards MCX, because I just think the whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah, and we're going to keep... Nick Arnott did fantastic work just showing what a lot of the problems were with their app, and they've had data breaches, and their COO and CEO can't get on the same page about what is allowed and what isn't allowed, and their PRs, and it's a complete and utter mess, and I think Steve Kovac from Business Insider is going to have a nervous breakdown as he keeps covering it. But if you want to hear a lot of talk about it, including us basically dramatically reading Nick's tweets as he was looking into it live, just check out this week's version of Vector. Anything else on your list, Allie?
Don't shop at Walmart. No. Let's see. I picked one of these up this week. It's fancy. Note 4.
What is that, Allie?
Note 4. So we'll see how this stacks up. I'm going to put it up against the iPhone 6 Plus this week for camera tests. So we'll see how that stacks up. Has a stylus. Phil would be proud. Yeah, other than that, not much camera comparisons, and I don't think anything else we really didn't touch base on. Halloween's tomorrow. We got a nice little list of
what are you dressing up as for Halloween, Allie?
I can't tell you that.
It's a secret. Well, pictures later.
A muggle. I'm going to be a muggle.
Well, follow everybody on Instagram.
Yep. Yeah, but we have a list up of what I think movies and TV shows maybe that are Halloween related. Some of them are on sale for Halloween, so check that out.
We have best games to show off your new iPad Air 2 from Simon, and best apps to show it off from Allie. So lots of stuff to keep you busy.
Mm-hmm.
And the review is live, Ren. Yay! Woohoo!
I'm losing my mute button. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, check it out.
By many people put into that.
Yeah, it was. No, I'm super happy. We've got all of that behind us now. Just the Mac reviews left.
Phew. And then Rene, I hear you go on vacation at the end of November.
Rumor has it.
You're actually taking a vacation. I know. Allie looks displeased.
It's in the out of office calendar, Allie.
It is?
Yeah.
Whoa. I must have browsed it and thought it said Ren and not Rene. Because I don't think I've ever seen that, and I've been around for almost 5 years. So
we're gonna see how it works. It's gonna be interesting. All right, awesome. So, Allie, if people want to follow you on the internet, if they want to see what you're up to, if they want to try and catch you in a tweet on your Galaxy Note 7, 4, whatever it is, where can they go?
At iMore all day long, every day, and at iMuggle on all of the things.
Nice. And Ren, what about you?
iMore.com for all of the videos. I'm doing a video series now. I should have mentioned that. Yeah.
What is that about?
Working. It's working out well. And then you can find me at Settern, Settern, on all of the things, every single one of them.
If Peter Cullen were here, he would tell you that you could find him at Flarg, Flargh. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find all of our podcasts, that includes Debug for Developers, Iterate for Designers, Vector for sort of humanity and technology, Review for entertainment, and a bunch of other stuff at imore.com/podcast. We do this show live almost every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. If you can't watch us live, and live really is the best because you can ask us questions, the kind that we answered today during the show. We are available in video form on YouTube at youtube.com/iMoreVideo and in audio form on iTunes or RRS. All the links should be below where you're watching this video. Ali, Ren, thank you so much. That was delightful.
Thank you.
I want to once again thank Swirl for sponsoring the show. If you go to getswirl.com, that's www.getsworl.com, and use promo code iMore, you will get 20% off your first order, and you will bring all your awesome photographs to life in framed photos in the real world. Thank you, Swirl.